All right, Bob, it is 6 o'clock. If you want to go ahead and call the meeting to order, I would appreciate it.
You're on mute, Bob.
Hello.
Are we there? Am I still muted?
Yep, you're good, Bob. We can hear you.
All right, we'll call this meeting of the Parks and Recreation Steering Committee meeting to order. And as we don't have any minutes from last meeting, I think we'll just defer it over to Matt, who's going to lead the meeting. So Matt, you take over.
Thank you, Bob. I'm going to go ahead and call the roll for our steering committee members. We do have a number of guests who are with us this evening, and I'll walk through some of that here in just a minute. But we'll start with Bob Wilson. Here. I don't see Paul Kraft. I'll say that he is absent, and I believe Steve Owen is going to be absent this evening as well. Jay McQuillan.
He's out of town, I believe.
I thought that Jay had joined us. Maybe not. Doug Sampson.
You're mute, Doug.
I saw Doug here earlier. I know he's here. Dan McDaniel, I see you here. Appreciate that. Excellent. We do have a quorum, and I wanted to go ahead and say that we have a number of guests here with us this evening. There have been a number of staff changes with some of our partner agencies. Will Thompson is going to be here for JYL. I did see him log in, and Marley Rendell with the YMCA is taking Dane Beck's place. Darrell Warren is just coming in. I know Karen Conway is here. Let's see here. Nick Lowe with McAdams Company is here as well.
Desire that thing. You assume it's coming because you assume that.
I'm gonna mute folks as they move in, and that just helps us to keep a little cleaner meeting. When you want to unmute and you want to speak, just tap your space bar or unmute yourself, and you're welcome to speak. I'm going to jump right into this meeting. The agenda for this evening is to discuss the fact that our town council asked the staff to reconsider a couple of options for the Parks and Recreation master plan. The master plan is something that we have been working on close to a year now, or a little bit more than that, trying to get an updated look at all of our Parks and Recreation facilities, and trying to get some feedback from the public about what they would like to see. We did do some survey work on that. I know that the McAdams group spent some time here in town at the Music in the Park events back when we were able to have those, and we will be getting ready to have those again shortly. We're going to be starting in June this year. Trying to give everybody a chance to get out and get vaccinated. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen here, and then everybody can see. I think everybody can see the screen now. Everybody see the plan? Yep, good. Getting some nods there. So this was the original plan. This is when we did a lot of the community input, the public input. This is what became out of that planning process. There is a couple of things I want to point out here. There's a small dog park down in this area, a large dog park out in this area. We looked at revamping the existing playgrounds into a much more inclusive type playground facility, renovate the basketball courts, add a new shelter, kind of relocate the volleyball courts down into this area, add a new shelter in here as well, and then a natural play area sort of in this existing natural area. We looked at the existing parking lot. That does need to be renovated. A lot of the community input that we got during this process pointed towards having an open lawn area, someplace that folks can come out, just hang out on the lawn, maybe throw a frisbee, that type of thing. There's some natural play berms here, some elevated terraces here, grass terraces, because this is a slope. It already sort of automatically lends itself to that. It's sort of a natural progression. Very small stage here for some smaller events. And then, some accessibility issues so that we can get down here to the golf course parking lot. That was plan one. And if you recall, the costs for that were essentially estimated at about $4.8 million. Obviously, this would be a phase type plan, and we would be looking to get Part F, that's Parks and Recreation Trust Fund funding, or Land and Water Conservation, LWCF funding, for some components. One of the things that Part F wants us to do is they're looking for new amenities. They will not fund existing renovations. So existing amenities, they do not want you to spend their money on updating an already existing amenity. They want to see you add new parks and recreation amenities. Our plan has been, to sort of phase this, work on the small dog park, large dog park, maybe the playground equipment, and try to make this phase one, move over into phase two with the natural area, the basketball courts, the shelters, and maybe the parking lot. And then eventually phase three, which is probably the largest chunk of that cost, was over here in the baseball field area. Just a little note about the baseball fields. The baseball fields are in disrepair. They've been that way. They've been on the capital improvements plan for a number of years. Our park superintendent, Scott Coakley, has made council aware of the fact that there are some issues there, mostly with the drainage. There's a number of drain pipes that go under here that are made of corrugated metal pipe. Excuse me, we do have a couple of people that are joining us, so I'm going to let them from the waiting room. Couple of the issues that we have over here relate to the drainage, and we're not getting hang tight with me just one second here. We're not getting a tremendous amount of play from the baseball fields, most likely because we don't have a lot of lights there. We do have a couple of lights that are not connected. They were added because of insurance. There was a couple of lights that were there that fell during a storm. It's been 10 to 12 years ago now. And those lights that were re-erected, they were used, we used the insurance money to do that. They have not been connected because, quite frankly, they cannot light the entire field. There was a lot of discussion back when the proposed development was occurring. Just to set the record straight, the developer approached us and said that they were interested in taking about 25 to 30 acres and building some sort of a recreation amenity. We talked to the JYL at that point and asked them, because they were one of our largest users of recreation facilities. We asked them what they would like to see, and the answer was that they would like to see, excuse me, we're letting some folks into the room. They would like to see better baseball fields. So we did a quick and dirty plan. We had McAdams kind of look at it and see what we could fit in the space that they were proposing, knowing full well that would have to go through both planning board and council. We got a lot of feedback from the public who said that they did not want to see baseball fields. So I think that the developer took that to heart. They took them off the plan, and we heard the public come back and say that they missed their baseball fields. They didn't understand where they went. So that being said, we are looking at some point in the future to possibly having better baseball amenities in a different location, whether it be at the Johnson property or some other location in town. The existing facilities are sufficient for 12 and under baseball, but that's about it.
Matt,
With two fields, we can't really have a tournament, those types of things. However, during that process, the council asked us if we would look at doing an alternative concept plan whereabouts we would keep the baseball fields in place. We went back to McAdams and they were gracious enough to assist us with this. And they came up with a very nice plan. I will say that it is very attractive. They are showing a couple of baseball fields using synthetic turf, and then they would also line that for soccer. One of the, as a lot of people probably know, one of the biggest uses that we have of our recreation facilities is for soccer. We are currently, Scott has a group called Soccer Shots that has been so popular for our very competitive for our rental of our soccer fields that he said Soccer Shots, has been gracious enough to move down here and utilize this area, which has been great. The concept here would renovate this entire facility, put in synthetic turf, which would be great because there's very low maintenance. We don't have a large recreation staff, as Scott will tell you. It's himself, one other full-time employee, and currently one part-time employee. So having synthetic turf would eliminate a lot of the field maintenance issues. Plus, it would allow people to play even if it had rained recently. One of the things that we see over at our soccer complexes, especially we've had the last couple of years been extremely rainy. Those fields don't lend themselves very well to repetitive use right after a rainstorm. So this would help with that. We've asked them to put in stadium lighting, would light this entire field. They have essentially kept the concession stand and restroom building in place. They've kind of altered it a little bit to allow for some batting cages to be retained here. There's some concrete stadium seating on the hillside, and then there's some metal bleachers that could be installed along here, a pedestrian crosswalk and entryway, as you see here. That plan does not come without cost. The estimate for the updated alternative plan is just over $6 million. It's $6.1 million. The largest differences are basically in the site elements components and in the lighting components. Lighting is extremely expensive. The lighting component here was $470,000. That's the estimate. And then, of course, the site elements went from a little over $1 million to $2.5 million. So those are the areas where you see the biggest differences. We're going to be taking this plan to the town council on April the 20th. I am asking the Recreation Committee if they would to support us taking that to the council and recommend that we go ahead and adopt it. Then that does not mean that we need to make a decision on which concept we want to pursue at this point. It just means that it's in the plan. The plan will contain both items, and it is something for us to discuss as a community going forward. I will say that Part F would probably not pay for any of these types of improvements. This is not a new amenity. This is basically a renovation of our existing facilities, maybe a little bit of an upgrade, but it's not likely something that's going to be successful to ask for grant funding. So the town would be on the hook for renovations of that facility. I'm done speaking, and I'd be glad to turn it over for questions if anybody has them at this time.
I'll make one comment about LWCF, Matthew.
Thank you, Nick.
Evidently, LWCF this year has taken it away from renovating their old parks. So if you had LWCF funding for a park, you could only apply for that funding. Now they are allowing existing parks. They've changed it for this
Very
year.
good.
So LWCF might be an avenue for this park either way, just because they're like, you got a park, you need some renovations. And I think that's due to the fact that in the past few years, a lot of people hadn't applied because it's hard to get the money. So just a comment on something new with them.
Thank you very much for that. That is good information to know. It's very wise to have a great number of folks here to, there's much smarter than I am. Thanks, Nick.
Even though the plan is more expensive than the ones we talked about originally, I really like it better because I think it's a more efficient use of the land. I think last time when we had the ballpark someplace else, to me, we were just kind of filling up space with some things that I don't know if we'd have used them as much. So I think it's a very efficient plan. And of course, the synthetic turf is what makes it more expensive, but as you said, that's going to be a lot easier to maintain and won't have chemical costs. It's a good plan.
Hey, Matthew, since I know it's gonna come up in the council meeting, do we, have we priced out the lights for from a couple different sources, or are there more than one, from a price standpoint, cost standpoint?
I'll defer to Nick. I will say Musco is your sort of industry standard for these
Okay.
types of things. Nick, what other options are out there?
If you don't go with Musco, sometimes you can get a cheaper option from a local electrical company. Sometimes they'll do those, but you really do down on the quality. The reason to go with Musco is they service the lights, and you can actually, instead of paying for them all, you can enter into a rental contract where they take full service and you just kind of pay for them as you go, kind of like you'd
Really?
pay for a Duke Energy light downtown. So
Gotcha. Okay,
Excellent.
cool.
Good to know.
Thanks.
How many lights are there? I only saw one on the plan.
let's see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So each field would take 3 is
Okay.
what we're thinking. And that's so that you can,
You're on mute.
Nick,
You're
we
mute,
lost
Nick.
you.
I'm the world's worst at unmuting, sorry. There's 6, and that's just so there's no dark spots. So there'd be 1 at each end and then 4 in, we'll just say in the middle there.
That's good. With the,
And also there's a net next to the golf course number 5 to try to keep golf play from flying over there. So that was one other addition we didn't have before, I don't think.
I think Scott can attest to this, having worked at the golf course, that the maintenance facility there gets bombarded with errant golf shots from the number 1 tee every once in a while.
Constantly, and we're always picking up golf balls off the baseball field. So, but luckily in the past, the most of your baseball is in the evening, and golf is pretty much finished for the day.
Were
Nick.
Go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry, Nick. Just a quick question. If I'm not mistaken, hasn't the funding for the PARTF and the LWCF gone up tremendously over the past year? So, which would make it a great time to start putting in for grant money.
So the thing with that is I think part of has stayed the same and LWCF may have gone up, but I think the problem is with this year is getting the count. So right now, part of applications are due to be reviewed, and then they're reviewed and then they're due in May. So depending on adoption, it might be hard to get a part of submittal in and reviewed properly because you like to get it in with your grant guys. So, I mean, it'd probably be next year, Scott, but I think they are planning, they're a little bit unsure about monies next year, but from what I've heard, they're still funding things and it's still there. So, but they're pushing everybody to LWCF just because nobody's applied. It's kind of a secret. So,
Thank you.
So as far as the renovated fields, would they still be for 12 and under?
yes, that's the length of the ball fields. I think they're 200.
200.
So you'd have the ability to do the mobile fences, and Scott said he likes to use the mobile mounds. So you just kind of take those things in and out, but it is 200 feet. So
Gotcha.
yeah, for
Okay.
kids.
Hey, Nick, question on the soccer proportions. Can you do 2 fields sideways, or is it just 1 field long ways?
It's 1 full-size field long ways, but if I remember right, this field will divide up into either 2 or 3 U12s.
Okay, thank you.
Any ballpark idea on the money we could get from either state or federal, approximately what we could possibly get of this total cost?
So the most you can get from PARTF is $500,000, And now a $500,000 project, I mean, it's, bang up and you got to sell it real good. I think you could sell some items on this project, but what they've been telling people to go for is 350. And I am not as sure with how much money you can get with LWCF right now. But I know part of you have to match, the town has to match 500 with 500. So it's a matching contribution.
So that 6 million will be spread over several years, right?
It would definitely be a phased approach for sure. So the strategy is, and we've actually hired Jen Beadle, who used to work with Recreation Resources. So she reviewed the part of applications. So she would be a good resource if you guys decide to go next year to hone in and pick out the items that she thinks are the bang up ones that are, yep, we're going to get funding. So it's very strategic.
This is Dave. Is there any possibility of the American Rescue Act? I know a lot of the different agencies are getting extra funding for projects, and I really haven't heard whether any parks and recreation type stuff is included, but I do know there's all sorts of things coming down where agencies may be getting additional funds, to stimulate the economy and, water, sewer, wastewater, and even special projects that might even come through the state. Has there been any word from the state people on whether they would receive any of that money?
And I know last year there was a COVID fund that you could apply for, and it had to do with outdoor recreation and exercise. And it was just until the money ran out. I've heard some stirrings of some of those coming up, and I actually have a client in Davie County who was getting some more information about it, that we were going to apply for a fitness park they were doing. So as I find information, I'll definitely let Matthew know, but I think that some of that is coming up. Yes.
Is synthetic turf considered safe now? Our football
Yes.
team has gone from synthetic to, live grass multiple times over the 50 years I've followed the Gamecocks. But what is the thought on that?
So the thought on that is what people were concerned with was the recycled rubber, and the fact that there might be some chemicals coming from that were getting children sick. But now they have a lot of infills that are antimicrobial that they use that are more like coconut fiber and different things like that. And they've kind of gone away from the rubber. I know the rubber is the cheapest, but they are sourcing it from different places. But that was the main concern, was the rubber infill they were using. But there are other infills. And I haven't heard any concern with, I guess, the plastic that the grass is made of. But as far as that, they've kind of moved away from the infills that they thought were, for lack of a better term, poisonous. So,
Thank you.
And I know that this is Karen. I talked about the parking lot having to be resurfaced, I know that wasn't a conversation in our original, when we originally met the last time. Is like, what needs to be done? Just resurfaced, or could you speak to the renovation of the parking lot that you had mentioned?
I'll go ahead, Matthew. Sorry.
And I know Scott knows a little bit more about it than I do, so I'll let him speak too. But I know that hasn't been resurfaced in a long time. It's not in very good condition, and it's something that we had talked about seal coating, but I think that would probably not be a wise use of money. Probably would be best for us to, in conjunction with another project going on out here, go ahead and resurface it. Scott, you want to jump in?
That parking lot, even the curbing is just falling apart and in pieces, the concrete curbing. But the blacktop is definitely cracked and coming up in a lot of different places. So that parking lot's in dire need. It definitely needs to be redone. No matter what we do soon.
Okay, I just wondered because I don't remember it being in our original conversation, I guess, when we had talked about this before. So I just wondered how it got thrown in there. for this go around. So I just was curious, but thanks.
Problem.
Any other questions about the concepts or the original plan at all?
Which phase do we propose doing first? Which part of the park?
So I think I understood the question to be which phase would be first. Is that correct, Dan?
Correct.
Okay. Most likely, and we haven't really sat down and tried to figure out exactly which phases would come first, but a little bit of the low hanging fruit would be to look at doing the dog parks, perhaps the inclusive playground, renovate the basketball courts, and relocate the volleyball courts. That would probably be in phase one. It's around our existing parking lot. It's right at our Greenway connection. We do have a lot of folks that are interested in having dog park. So I think that would be very popular or well received. Probably your next phase would be looking at doing the natural playground area, adding the shelters. Those are very expensive. And then probably a third phase would be to tackle what's going to happen with the existing baseball fields. By that point, we may know a little bit more about what's going to happen with other developments in town. It could be that another developer, if that does come to fruition, may want to incorporate some type of baseball facility. I think that if we were looking at baseball facilities, if we were going to put a tremendous amount of money into a baseball facility, or if somebody was going to build us a facility, I would like to see us have something that's a little bit more flexible for a wider range of ages to use it, and possibly for us to host tournaments and those types of activities as well. But if we do decide that we want to do alternative B, or the option B, the alternative concept with the synthetic turf, we do have a couple multi-use options there that McAdams and Nick has been really good about putting those in. So where we could use soccer and baseball. So that's sort of an added benefit, if you will. So that's up for discussion at this point.
On the dog parks, I guess we can assume there would be bag stations.
Yes.
Yes.
We like to do that and watering fountains for the dogs if it hits the budget. And a little bit more on the dog park. Usually we like to go with at least a 6-foot tall fence, and then you see the shelter split in the middle and some trees. We definitely like to provide shade for everybody in there. So.
What about from the standpoint of the way this plays out? Again, I just want to make sure everybody's clear that might be watching. I mean, this is going to be phased in, and we don't have to decide on ballpark versus the other right now. This is something that can, play out over time as we decide which way we want to go with this, right?
That's absolutely the case. Yes. At this point, what we're going to be asking is for the Recreation Committee to make a recommendation that we incorporate alternative B, the option B, into the master plan and bring that to council at their meeting on April the 20th. And at that point, I'm going to be asking the council to go ahead and adopt the plan, and then we can have a little bit more community conversation about which phases we need to do first, and which portions we would like to see the town pay for, and which ones we'd like to see if we can get some alternative funding sources, whether it be LWCF or Part F. Those are the two main ones.
This is Dave again. I know that without an adopted plan, we have no chance of getting funding for anything. And so there was a discussion, about the plan A and the plan B. And what we're really trying to do is to take a look at that, but to make sure that Jamestown has an adopted plan so that we would be eligible to apply for these or any other funds that are available. And right now, we're pretty well stymied.
Got it.
That is actually well said, Dave. Thank you.
Hey, Matt, this is Jim. Just a quick question, make sure I'm understanding. It kind of seems like on the baseball fields, and to be honest, I was good with the first approach with the lawn area, and the second approach is fantastic. And I like that you can get 3 soccer fields down there, but it kind of sounds like we're kind of kicking that part down the road a little bit in hopes that if another developer comes in, they may or may not contribute land to do these things. At some point, though, we have to make a decision that development may never happen. We have to do something with this field. So like the other gentleman just said, it's either A or B. How do we not, it just seems like we're kicking the can on the baseball fields a little bit in hopes that something else better. It's a lot of money, I get that, but is that, am I reading that right? Or maybe it's just, I'm misinterpreting it.
No, I mean, we have a decision to make. It's not up to me. It's up to the council. It's up to the public. If they like the idea of keeping the baseball fields there, McAdams has given us a great alternative, and that's to have a synthetic turf field that has 2 baseball fields and a soccer field component. So it's multi-use. But it is probably most likely, now Nick has just given us some good information that LWCF may allow us to apply for some funding for renovation component, monies. But it looks like, a good portion of that will be something that we would have to pay for there. And hopefully we could be successful in obtaining some grant money as well. Certainly not trying to kick the can down the road, but we do have a decision.
Yep. Thanks.
Any other questions about the plan as it stands?
Any questions from the committee members? I guess we need to take a vote, Matt.
Yes, it would be great if you could entertain a motion, hopefully to accept the plan and make a recommendation in favor to town council. That would be a motion and a second, and then if you want to call for all in favor and then any opposed.
Can I hear a motion to oppose that from the committee member?
Motion to accept.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion proposed and a second. Any questions at this point?
Who was the second?
Dan.
Dan McDaniel. All right, how about we have all the committee members raise their hand in front of the screen if they're in favor of accepting the proposal.
Okay, perfect.
All set, Katie?
I said perfect.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. That's all I have to bring to you this evening. Hopefully that we can get this taken to the council on April the 20th, and they will adopt this. And as Dave said, we will move forward with some conversations on possibly making some grant applications in the near future.
Thank you for all your work. Do I hear a motion we dismiss the meeting?
Motion to dismiss.
A second? We have a second.
Second.
All right, thank you for all attending. We will see you all soon.